Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Janice Kaminer-Resnick, and I welcome you on behalf of members of our leadership team, former Congressman Mel Levine and former LA County Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky, in addition to myself. Thank you and welcome to today's guest, former Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn, and tonight's moderator, the wonderful Patt Morrison. Officer Dunn wrote a memoir called Standing My Ground. I hope you can see this. It became an instant New York Times bestseller. The book is a firsthand account of the harrowing events of January 6th, when Officer Dunn and his fellow officers put their lives on the line to protect our capital, our country, and our democracy. Harry Dunn, we appreciate your service, and we are grateful to you for being with us tonight. And I really recommend the book. I'm in the middle of it, and it's really a harrowing tale. It's very personal and very easy to read. The big question, are we ready for January 6, 2025, the date of the counting and certification of electoral votes in Washington? The day has been designated a national special security event by the Secretary of Homeland Security, and we await your thoughts about that. We want to talk for a minute about tomorrow's program. While, of course, Jennifer Rubin will be with us to provide her analysis of the election, presidential election, and other elections, this year, we will start with a memorial to David Lehrer. For those who are newer to our America at a Crossroads audience, you might not have known David. David co-founded this series almost 5 years ago with Zev and Mel and myself, and was a huge force behind its development and success. On October 25th, 2023, David very suddenly died, which left his beloved wife, his children and grandchildren, and our entire America at a Crossroads community shocked and bereft. David was an extraordinary human being who devoted his life to community relations. We will be joined tomorrow by David's eldest son, Eli, who will share some of his thoughts on this, the 1-year anniversary of David's death. We hope you will join us for our brief memorial to pay respects to and honor the life of this remarkable human being, David Lehrer. That's tomorrow. Wishing all who celebrate a wonderful Sukkot holiday. We have Sukkot ending this Thursday evening, but enjoy the rest of the time. Now I hand the program over to Patt Morrison, who has won countless awards, Pulitzers, Golden Mikes, Emmys, and more for her extraordinary journalism. Please welcome the wonderful Patt Morrison. Patt?
Janice, thank you. And thank you to everybody watching and supporting this program. And do give a minute of your thoughts to David Lehrer, the founder of this, and such a remarkable citizen of the world, and a man who contributed immensely and still does, even in his absence, to making this a better place, a more civil place. There have been a few days in American history that were worse than January 6, 2021, but not many of them. January 6th was different in part, says our guest, Harry Dunn, because we didn't see it coming, that insurrectionists would try to destroy the very lifeblood of this nation at the seat of its legislative government. A mob inspired by President Donald Trump and intent on stopping the certification of the presidential election converged on the Capitol, broke into the building, hunting and threatening the lives of legislators and staff, and in the process, attacking and beating Capitol Police and damaging this seat of government. 4 civilians died. 1 was shot, 1 died of a drug overdose, 1 had a heart attack, and 1 a stroke. And 5 Capitol Police officers died, 1 from injuries in this fracas, and 4 more by suicide in the months after. More than 170 were injured, and all of them have stories to tell. Harry Dunn is telling his story in his new book, Standing My Ground. Officer Dunn, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Truly honored and humbled to be here talking with this large audience with you all. Also, I just want to acknowledge I left the department in December, so I still keep in touch with a lot of members of the Capitol Police. And just recently, 2 weeks ago, we had another individual who was at the Capitol on January 6th who died via suicide about 2 weeks ago. He was there on January 6th. Obviously, with suicide, you don't know anybody's particular reasoning, but he was there and he served bravely at the Capitol for 16 years, protecting the seat of democracy. So it's still ongoing, even almost 4 years later. So I just wanted to point that out.
A lot of people, including one of your colleagues, Michael Fanone, have been have not been understanding about what the role the Capitol Police had before January 6th. And
Yeah.
he called you guys glorified security guards. And yet in 1998, two Capitol officers were shot to death by an intruder in the Capitol. And as we recited the horrific toll of January 6th, what's the job there, and how is it changing?
Yeah, it's interesting that a lot of people on January 5th didn't know that the Capitol Police even existed. Um, but we've been there for centuries. And our job is the mission statement of the Capitol Police is to create a safe, secure environment so Congress can fulfill their constitutional responsibilities and obligations. So that's our number one primary focus. As people know that the Capitol is the people's house. So it's open to the public. It's not like the White House. It's not like some of these other federal buildings that you have a fence around and people can't come in. It's the people's house, and it's written that people have access to their members. So we have to make sure that it's safe for Congress. I mean, any given day you walk up to the Capitol, you can walk into some of the most high profile congressmen and women and senators just walking out and across the street right with you. So our job is to keep them safe. But in addition to that, we have everyday police forces. We have K-9 teams. We have a SWAT team. We have officers that pull people over for running red lights and do traffic stops. We have foot patrols, bike patrols, and we have people that ride around in the Suburbans, the Secret Service, but it's the Capitol Police. It's our Dignitary Protection Division, and they ride around with the leadership of the members of the Congress, the Senate, the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader, the Minority Leader. They all have protection details that follow them through across the country, wherever they may be going.
So, and yet the duties as they ended up happening on that particular day, you've been there, protests, inaugurations, demonstrations. This January 6th, you said it was the first time you'd been told to pick up riot helmets. And when you got to the west side of the Capitol, you wrote it was like a scene from a gladiator movie. We've all seen video, but can you
Sure.
describe it from what you saw?
Sure. So even at the Capitol, I mean, I've dealt with numerous demonstrations, events, inaugurations, Million Man marches, where the police are extremely outnumbered. So, but they weren't, violent or, antagonistic events for the most part. But majority of the time, police are always going to be outnumbered by the number of people that occupy this country versus the number of police officers in this country. What made this event different? I've been over on the west lawn of the Capitol. If anybody, I'll paint a visual picture. It's the lawn that right on where they take the oath of office when they're inaugurated. You look down, you see the mall. A lot of people, when they come to DC, they say, "Hey, where's the mall?" And they're thinking of it as a shopping center. No, it's a long grassy area that spans about 16 blocks well, even longer than that. 16 blocks is the point where the White House and the Washington Monument come into play down a long grassy area.
Sure.
And on the other side of that, the reflecting pool that Martin Luther King gave his iconic speech. So a lot of people, I've seen that area covered with just people. When I talk about the scene from a gladiator movie, is though that same scene existed, all the people, but this time they were beating police officers. They had their flags. It was like they were onward. Their mission was to take the Capitol. I mean, everybody had flags. They were screaming. They were yelling. They were chanting. There was smoke in the air, and it just seemed like a scene from a movie. But it wasn't a movie. It was real life, and police officers were being attacked and savagely beaten.
You were moving from hotspot to hotspot throughout the Capitol, sort of wherever you saw that there was a need, wherever you saw their officers under assault.
Sure, yeah. So we at the Capitol, one thing that's with police, everybody has an assignment and a responsibility. And it's important in police work that everybody sticks to that assignment no matter what is going on around them. You're even if nothing's going on, you can't leave your area of responsibility. Um, but there were so many calls where people just needed help. The building was surrounded by people, and I say it. I was putting out fires, metaphorically speaking. Obviously, I can't say obviously because on that day it was so much going on. It's surprising that it wasn't fire, literally fires, going on. But I'm speaking metaphorically now. Um, Officers were calling for assistance because they were trapped, or outnumbered or surrounded by a group of rioters, or there was a call that staff was trapped in an office and they couldn't get out because the hallway was full of rioters and they barricaded the doors, or somebody having a medical emergency, or just it was just call after call after call. And I was armed that day with a long gun, M4 rifle. So my I made a tactical decision to not go down in the crowd and engage. I tried to keep a position of advantage where I had an an overwatch position. You go down in the crowd, and it was to stop them from taking the weapon from me and then using it. It was that volatile already. So I
Well,
was running. Sorry.
no, I was going to ask you about that because you make a point in your book. People often say, why didn't you shoot the insurrectionists? Meaning not you, but the Capitol Police, many of whom were armed.
One of the things I had a conversation with a member of Congress not too long ago, and it's we had Americans attacking Americans. It was like a terroristic threat. I feel like I won't say easy. It's not easy, but it's more defined on what your job and your responsibility is. Um, so that the understanding of the mission, I guess, so to speak, but also just being so opening fire on American citizens, just outside of it being very difficult to do. It's the thought that even came into it crossed my mind. Yes, who to shoot, but then still being a police officer, you're responsible for every round, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So which person do you shoot first? Um, how do you aim? Like you're surrounded by 60 people and you pull out your gun, then they grab your gun. It was just, I think the Capitol Police showed, I don't necessarily know, restraint, yes, but I think they showed survival in what policing, I think, should look like in a way of professionalism. Because, I mean, as like I talked about earlier, how the mission statement of the Capitol Police was to create a safe environment. As ugly as January 6th was, at the end of the day, the mission was fulfilled, and Congress went back and certified the election. It was yeah, a hell of a delay in it, but the job was done. But going back to who do you shoot? Like, why didn't you? I mean, everybody has to have an answer individual. It wasn't an order, a specific order. Don't shoot. If anybody's wondering that, everybody has to answer for every decision you make. So if you shot one bullet, you have to be able to account where it went. Why did you do it? Were there any other options? And I
Yeah.
just think that officers did their best that day.
Well, just recently at a town hall this month, Donald Trump said there were no guns down there. We didn't have guns. The others had guns, but we didn't have guns. You were the others that he was speaking about in this. And
Yeah,
there were guns there.
there were guns there. That's categorically false. And it's not even worth trying to beat a dead horse with him, with the former president. When he talks, just have to consider that it's a lie coming out of his mouth. So there were guns there, plain and simple. People were arrested for possession of firearms. People were arrested for discharging firearms. So 100% of that is false.
Also, he said it was a day of love. And Staff Sergeant Aquilon Gunnell, one of your colleagues, posted on Twitter, yeah, they almost love me to death.
Yeah. Sergeant Gunnell has become a good friend. Well, we knew each other our entire careers. And he almost died that day, as did a lot of other officers. They were surrounded and outnumbered and beat, and their gas masks were ripped off of them. There was chemical irritants. And let's be clear, the other side was prepared for a fight. They just didn't come there with just, some khaki cargo pants on and a book bag and a bat. Like they had gas masks, they had two-way radios, they had
They have zip ties.
bulletproof vests, they had zip ties. So they were prepared. A lot of them, some of them were prepared more than the police officers were. But no, it was anything but a day of love. It's been almost 4 years, right? And I think the gambit of emotions that I've been through, it started out as, hurt, anger, sadness, depressed. And now I'm just almost indifferent to anything that he says, because it's been 4 years of nothing but him lying, double downing, doubling down. And if I don't expect him to change his position, I almost expect him to say the most egregious and outrageous things. I expect that from him. So him saying that, yes, it still makes me upset, but it's been 4 years of that.
He's also said he will pardon the January 6th, hundreds of people who have been convicted. Pardon them if he gets back in.
Pat, that's one of the things, honestly, I wish that, one, I wish that the world didn't know who I was. I wish that I wasn't talking to about 1,500 people right now. I wish that I was still a member of the Capitol Police. I wish that Donald Trump was held accountable for his crimes. The fact that he is 4 years later still talking about January 6th. Like, we've heard people that his supporters are saying nobody cares about it. Let's move on. Only the Democrats are talking about it. That's not true at all. Donald Trump brings up January 6th every time that he gets in front of an audience. And while I'm not surprised by any of the things that he says, not at all. I'm not surprised at anything. He is talking about them. And as long as he's continuing to tell those lies about it, I'll be on the other side, pushing back, standing up for my coworkers, standing up for America, standing up for democracy, just like me and my coworkers did on January 6th. I'm not going away until he's held accountable. And hopefully in the election, that's going to be his accountability date.
He is not alone. There are members of Congress who were hiding under their desks, people that
Yeah.
you and your colleagues protected and saved their lives, who now say it was no big deal and that it was just tourists. Of course, the Capitol was closed because of COVID. So I don't know where these tourists thought they were going, but
Yeah.
but even people who went through this are now saying it was no big deal, following the Trump lead.
And that's what it is. So Donald Trump has this, and this is getting a little deeper than more than just January 6th. People that were there know how bad it was. People were disgusted. Even like Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz was on Fox News one day, a very interview with Tucker Carlson, and Ted Cruz called it an insurrection. And Tucker Carlson scolded Ted Cruz about using the language insurrection. And then Ted Cruz came back all apologetic and said, I didn't mean that, you're right. And you're right, Tucker, and almost like groveling and changing his stance on it. And that's it's political suicide to go against anything that Trump says, even as blatantly as a lie, that it is. So a lot of times they don't agree with him. There have been so many people quietly who say how bad it was, but publicly they won't say anything at all. I mean, look what happened to Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. They were run out of Congress for standing up to Donald Trump, and not even just them. People don't realize the House of Representatives after just January 6th voted to impeach Donald Trump, and there were 11 or 12 Republicans that voted to impeach him. Zero of them are still serving in Congress. Zero. It's not a coincidence. It's when you go against Donald Trump, he has this way of having it's cult-like, saying that you're not pro-American, you're not a Republican, you're not conservative because you want to hold me accountable. And it's despicable, and that's kind of why we are where we are in this country right now. And not getting too ahead of myself, but a lot of people feel politically homeless because they don't agree with what Donald Trump is doing right now.
My guest is Harry Dunn. He was a Capitol Police officer for more than 15 years. His new book is called Standing My Ground. and you can put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them a little later in this hour and try to get to as many as we can. Um, Mr. Dunn, one of the things that brought you to the public's attention is that you talked to a BuzzFeed reporter about something that wasn't being covered, which was a particular aspect of what was going on with the Capitol Police and with law enforcement and with the rioters, with the insurrectionists, which was the racism that you saw exhibited. You said you had never, in uniform as a Capitol Police officer, been called an N-word until that day.
You know, and you know what? You know what sucks about that? When I brought up being called the N-word, I was met with, "Oh, you're making it all about race." They just beat the hell out of Capitol officers, attacked the Capitol, stopped the peaceful trend, and you want to talk about I'm making it about race? It was insane, like almost to the point where like, what's the point? You bring up racism or you know any type of discrimination, people want to just the number one thing is to act like it doesn't exist. Now, I don't believe that January 6th was a racist event, but I believe there were a lot of people there who were racist. When I talked about being called the N-word, I had several of my coworkers come to me and tell me their stories about being called the N-word. And even white officers came to me and said that they witnessed it. They just felt so horrible the way that officers were being pelted with racial slurs. And it was just a different battle that day. Sure, we all went through the horrors of, you know, seeing our country, our capital desecrated, seeing American people attack the Capitol, attack officers. So moral injuries there, but Black people and minorities, even women, even the sexism that women had. People talked about women being fake cops there, and they were just desecrate. I mean, disrespecting women. Just y'all aren't real cops. You're women. Going making sexist comments about you should be home at home and let the men handle it, like that type of stuff. And it's crazy. They get mad at me for bringing up being called the N-word. It's really disappointing, but that it definitely existed.
And you also saw a few of your fellow Capitol officers who were Trump supporters, one who posed for a selfie with some of the rioters. That must have been dispiriting, whatever sense
Yeah.
of esprit de corps.
Sure.
Won that
I'll
day.
address that real quick because that was one of the things people talk about. They were being ushered in and there were people taking pictures with them. I honestly believe, and this is just my opinion, I didn't talk, I know who the officers were. I didn't ask them what the hell were they doing. But just based on some of the conversations I've had with people, people were scared and fearful for their lives. And if you're surrounded and like it was uncomfortable, and I just think people were just trying to survive that day. Nobody was welcome in the Capitol that day. Officers were overwhelmed, and you saw people, officers fighting back, pushing back guardrails, doing everything they can. The people that were in the Capitol, they had already breached 3 and 4 different layers of security. So yeah, then when they say they were in the Capitol walking around, yeah, they had already breached like 3 and 4 layers of security. You breached it. You beat the officers down. The whole Capitol was surrounded. Like, how many officers do you think we had? That's why we were so dependent and calling on the National Guard. We needed help. We
And you
couldn't
also
defend every
saw
door. We couldn't defend every window.
you
Sorry.
also you also saw among the rioters law enforcement officers, at least one of whom flashed his badge at you like,
Yeah.
hey, it's okay, I'm here, I know what I'm doing. My goodness, do you have a special sense of what was going on with those men?
You know, police officers, military, firefighters, there are a lot of people who were there that day who swore oaths to the country, to the Constitution. And it just shows how unserious people took it. Um, I'll tell you a quick story, or just a little information. Um, there was a police officer from Illinois who was charged um, for his actions on January 6th. He was charged by the DOJ. The FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police, had lawyers represent him in his disciplinary proceedings, um, because he got disciplined through his job. That's the type of system, the world that we live in, that the Fraternal Order of Police is defending an officer. I don't believe that this man was charged with beating police officers. I don't believe that. But he was guilty of crime. It was charged with crimes. And I'll do my research. I didn't follow up on it, but I got so disgusted when I found out that the FOP, Fraternal Order of Police lawyers, were representing him. It was almost like a slap in the face to other law enforcement. So there were people there who have taken the oaths of office, um, that got caught up in this cult. I don't like saying caught up. I don't like saying caught up because people made um, decisions. They made a decision. You didn't get caught up. You made a decision and you went with it.
And you also point out that some of the rioters, the insurrectionists, already had a criminal history, and some of them went on to accumulate more criminal records,
Yeah.
even after they were released, not charged, or on probation.
Sure. I mean, you think about it. I don't like to judge people, but a lot of those people there were already criminals. People were arrested for, disorderly conduct or drunk driving. I mean, even Ashley Babbitt had didn't have Ashley Babbitt is the young lady who was shot and killed by the Capitol Police. She had a past where she was a military veteran, Air Force veteran, and she knew better, right, so to speak, but she had taken that oath of office. So many people, I don't either they didn't take their oath seriously or they didn't know what that oath meant when they took it.
Um, there were so many personal moments in the book, and the one that really touched me was when, after hours of this battle, and you finally got a moment and you got your phone back and you called your 11-year-old daughter on a video call. You were very careful to wipe off your face and clean off the chemical spray and all
Yeah.
the mess. And here you were standing in the chaos of the Capitol, and you calling her just to feel like a normal person again. And she's talking about homemade ice cream to you.
I'll tell you this story. It's as parents, I think, everybody that's a parent in this listening, I think can relate to this. But the Capitol wasn't clear yet of insurrectionists, but the area where we were in, we had expelled everybody to like a lower level, a lower floor. So we had a moment to sit down, regroup, gather ourselves. Um, and I said to the 12 or so officers, um, hey, everybody's checking in. Hey, are you okay? Everybody okay? I was like, hey, y'all, call or text your loved ones. Call your wife, call your husband, call your spouse, your partner, your mom, your dad, and let them know that you're okay. I'm sure everybody's watching in horror right now and is worried about their loved ones. I was like, but don't be having long conversations. We got to get back to work, right? We still got work to do. Um, I couldn't find my phone. I forgot where I had put it. And then I remembered it was, remember I said we had posts and we had assignments that we had to stay at and we couldn't leave. I went back to my first place where I started the day and I got my phone. And as I was picking up my phone, it was an emotional day. It was an emotional moment. I was already crying and my eyes were red and I saw my daughter video calling me. And I said, all right, let me get myself together before I answer the phone. Let me stop crying. Let me wipe my face. You don't want to worry your kids. You want to make sure that you're present. She sees daddy as strong. Daddy's everything. Daddy's
You're 6'7", 300 pounds. We can understand
exactly.
it.
I'm invincible. I can do anything, daddy. So I'm like, all right, let me maintain that. So I wipe my face out and try to get myself together. I'm wiping my eyes. And as I'm wiping my eyes, I realize that there's pepper spray on my hands. So I'm wiping it in my eyes. And it was like the worst thing. So I answered my phone and I'll do it. I answered my phone and I'm, hey, baby. And my eyes are just like this. And she's trying to go on and on telling me about her day and that she made like homemade ice cream and stuff. And because, oh, it was terrible. But I just tried to be there as a parent, and just present. And as soon as I hung up the phone, like I'm like, all right, baby, I gotta go. Because I couldn't hold my eyes open anymore. I just screamed after I hit end on the call and just wiped my face. It was terrible. It was such a horrible moment. But just being present for your child, it was making sure that even when you're not okay, you have to make sure that they are. And that just bring me back to one of the most rewarding times of my life is just being a parent. So
We have a lot of questions we're going to get to, but I also wanted to find out your sense of how your life changed. So many lives ended, so many lives changed with the rioters who went to prison, Capitol Police who were assaulted with some of them with PTSD, as you have. But now you said you feel differently about the job, about democracy. Before you said it was just a job. And during the riot, at one point, you saw a portrait of John Lewis being destroyed by rioters. And the subtitle of your book is A Capitol Police Officer's Fight for Accountability and Good Trouble After January 6th. You bought yourself some good trouble.
yeah, I did. I was one of four people, officers, well, five, a couple gave accounts, but four that have been in the public testifying before Congress. And I struggled with the decision. I say I struggled with the decision to talk about it, right? Um, but it was only for a short period of time that I struggled to speak out. And John Lewis, I realized him, I'm not comparing myself to those fine Martin Luther King or John in any capacity, but they had to make hard decisions and speak out for what they knew was right. And I said, I can do this. Like it's important to speak out. And John Lewis, obviously at the Capitol before he died, was one of my just favorite people. He was just so kind, just such a nice, kind man. And then, doing my research and learning about the things that he did before I was even thought of, it just made me admire him even more, which is the ode to him. But as I was speaking out, I don't talk about this a lot. I was still employed with the Capitol Police when my book came out. So a lot of things, when I gave it to them for review, I had to get changed. I had to omit, I had to edit because, I'm still employed with the Capitol Police and, I have to abide by the rules. Um, I got suspended from work for speaking out on four separate occasions for doing news media, for pushing back against Donald Trump, for pushing back against members of Congress who we protected. I got suspended from work on four separate occasions. I had hours taken from me, pay deducted. My record, it was full after January 6th, um, was full of disciplinary files, and I call that good trouble because it was worth it. I wasn't going to shut up. I wasn't, and it was worth. I don't, like I said, people don't realize that a lot of my critics have been saying, "Oh, check that guy's bank account, and the Democrats are taking care of him," and blah 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 blah.
Tucker Carlson called you an angry left-wing political activist. You
Activists,
should put
yeah.
that on your business card.
I know, but you know what? When he said that, obviously death threats and calls and harassment started coming in. But he said Harry Dunn is an angry left-wing activist. So I said, all right, let me think. I am angry. Yeah, I am a Democrat, left-wing, angry activist. Look up the definition. Person that speaks out, get things done for advocating for. You know what? You're right. I am an angry left-wing activist, Tucker Carlson. And you know what? I am. I absolutely am.
You have testified at least two of the trials of the insurrectionists. A couple of weeks ago, you went to the sentencing of a woman who was attacking Officer Kevin Smith, who later committed suicide. And you have been outspoken. You have been out there. Are your former colleagues along with you? Are they saying, good job, Harry, but we can't do the same?
I have gotten, well, I begged my coworkers to join me, to speak out, to tell their stories. If you ask 100 Capitol Police officers what they went through that day, tell me what happened that day, you'll get 100 different stories. Everybody's story was unique. Everybody's story was different. Some people may have not felt scared. Some people may not have. And you know what? And that's okay. We can't diminish anybody's experiences just because it wasn't ours. So it's important to let everybody's stories be heard. So I say that I begged my coworkers to say, and some people were as simple as, "No, I'm not. I'm good. No, nothing's going to change." What's the point? Or somebody said, "Harry, I want to." My wife said, "Hell no. You can't. You ain't going on TV. No, you are not going on TV. My wife won't let me." Or somebody said, "Harry, I can't speak well." Or, "You know what, Harry? How about you talk to me and I won't do it, but you can tell my story." And which I did. I told two, three different officers tales in my book. What the things that they went through that day. When I testified before Congress, I was able to give voices to some of my coworkers, and I was okay with doing that. But a lot of them have still say, "Hey, keep going." So many people have forgotten about it. Honestly, people want to put it out of sight, out of mind. It's horrible, but why do you want to keep reliving a day like that? It's kind of like we put ourselves through these unnecessary. I think it's necessary, which is why I'm doing it. But so many people say, "What's the point? What'll change? Nothing
It's
will
like people
change."
wanting to forget COVID.
They want to, right? It's traumatic, but it's important that, and that's the thing. Like I said in Congress, how do we move on? I would love to. I would love to move on, but how do you move on without correcting what happened? You know?
On that point, let me put to you questions several people have, including somebody named Harry, who
Hey,
says
Harry.
on in January 2025, what are the plans for that vote count, for that inauguration, depending on which way it goes? Is there,
Yeah.
you know,
I know,
is lethal force now in the vocabulary of the
well, I
Capitol?
know a lot of people were worried, right, about the upcoming January 6th. And to the Senate's great credit, which is rare, I don't give them much credit, they went forward and they changed the Electoral College Act. They passed a law or new legislation that would reform the Electoral College Reform Act. And what that does is kind of makes January 6th a little bit more ceremonial now than actually being able to. Now, they'll still have the opportunity to, reject and stuff like that. But the threshold is a lot more now. It's not for now, one person could just object, and to any state and any Ted Cruz was the first objection when he on January 6th, and he objected to Arizona. Like, you from Texas, my guy, what are you doing? So they changed the threshold, the rules of being able to object. Um, and they made it so that the slate of electors that we've heard so much about, the fake slates of electors, the governors now are the people that are doing the certifying, with a lot of more precautions going forward. So that's on the electoral count side. On the physical side of it, right now, we have an adult in the White House. Joe Biden on January 6, 2025, will be the commander in chief of the country. And he is more than willing to be prepared. So the problem is we had a commander in chief that was part of the coup, the attempted coup, as my friend Jamie Raskin says, the attempted coup. Donald Trump was part of it. He wanted it to happen. So we have an adult in the White House now. Like you said, like Janet said at the beginning of the talk, it has been January 6th has been designated as a high security event. So there will already be all types of resources on the ground. There will be, I'm sure, of giant fence up. I'm almost sure of and certain of it. So they won't be taking in the Capitol was a fortress in the months after January 6th. It was a fortress. Um, and I believe, I'm not privy to any of the conversations now that are going on. I'm no longer a member of the Capitol Police, but I would almost bet my paycheck that it's going to be almost a fortress January 6, 2025. Um, so yeah, I think everybody should feel comfortable with the safety of January 6th at the U.S. Capitol.
Another person with no name posted here has a question, and this has been the subject of the campaign in recent weeks. Why young African American men are supporting Trump in 2024?
I just think this is a highlighted. People are talking about it, but in every election, I was doing some research on this earlier, and I saw that black people, black men, always vote with Republicans. It happens. It's a small percentage of them, but overwhelmingly they're in the upper 70s, 80% voting with Democrats. So whether it be Donald Trump or whether it be George W. Bush or Mitt Romney, people voted with Republicans. I voted for Republicans. So that exists. I think what happening now is I believe that there's a lot of misogyny going on with Kamala Harris being the nominee. People, sexism is still a thing. People literally voted against Hillary Clinton because she was a woman. So now you have a woman who is a black woman who is a double minority. Of course, the misogyny, the sexism, the racism is going to be loud, which it is. I don't think it's any different. I just think it's louder right now. But I think it's people talked about, when Barack Obama came out and he spoke about black people and black men specifically. And it was an uncomfortable conversation for people. But you know what I said? I think it was necessary. I'm glad that he did. And I think that it's better to have an uncomfortable conversation that will last an hour from Barack Obama than another 4 years uncomfortably under Donald Trump. And that's only if we're lucky, because, who knows if he'll leave office this next time. So that's why it's important that we do whatever we can to vote Kamala Harris into the White House.
Judge Joe from Los Angeles says Donald Trump has tried to blame Speaker Pelosi for failing to protect the Capitol. What's your understanding of where this responsibility lies, if any?
Sure. So that's a good question too, because that has been floating around there also. The way that and this is just me as a frontline officer and just the way that I understand things. The Capitol Police we have a chief of police, and the decision makers are the Capitol Police Board. The Capitol Police Board is made up of the Senate Sergeant at Arms, the House Sergeant at Arms, and the architect of the Capitol.
Which sounds weird that the architect would be in the chain of command there.
Well, they're responsible for the building. So it's a board and obviously the chief of the Capitol Police. So the chief of police is kind of at the behest of, we work for Congress. So they tell us, kind of like local municipalities, their chief answers to the county council, and different, it's similar to that. The architect of the Capitol is appointed by the President of the United States. So at that time, the architect of the Capitol was a Trump appointee. The House Sergeant at Arms was appointed by the Speaker of the House, which was Nancy Pelosi. And the Senate Sergeant at Arms was appointed by Mitch McConnell, because he was the leader of the Senate. So it was bipartisan, or it's not even very diverse if you think about it. It's a Trump appointee and a McConnell appointee and a Pelosi appointee. So it's kind of weird to say that Nancy Pelosi was in charge of does Mitch McConnell not bear any responsibility? At the end of the day, the only person responsible for the National Guard is the DC National Guard, the President of the United States. And he takes his orders he gets his recommendations from the Secretary of the Army, which, if people have paid attention to the January 6th hearings, they talked about the generals and their failings of what they did not do on January 6th. And the point of the matter is that Donald Trump failed to act to protect the Capitol. Well, not even one. Even if we want to talk about the preparation, we did it. Maybe they should have had a fence up or did more. Once he saw that violence was happening, he sat for 181 minutes and did nothing. So when he talks about his Nancy Pelosi's job, okay, then if she failed, then why didn't you step in and if she failed? I don't believe that she did. But again, that's just my opinion, and I don't know how it works. At the top, But if she did, you sat on your hands as the commander in chief um, for 108, 3 hours and did nothing. So
One of our viewers, Michael, wants to know whether you think the trials and prison sentences of the January 6th terrorists has a deterrent effect against a repeated insurrection.
I do believe so, but there is this one looming aspect, and you mentioned it earlier, where Donald Trump talked about pardons. The accountability serves two purposes. It provides some type of closure, some type of peace, restitution for victims and those who are aggrieved. It's one function of accountability. The second one is to serve as a deterrent to keep people from doing it again. The January accountability has not been had at the highest levels of, or for January 6th, has not been served at the highest levels, to include some members of Congress, possibly, and Donald Trump. So, what is to keep Donald Trump from doing it again? Now, listen, people were at the Capitol. They thought that they were right. They thought that they were allowed to be there because the president of the United States, the arguably most powerful person in the world, said, go do this. I mean, like, if my mom tells me to do something, I don't care what it is, I'm gonna do it. It's my mom. Like, everybody listens to their mother, but this is the president. Like, he's not gonna tell you anything wrong, right? Wrong. He will. He did. But what's to stop him from doing it again, especially because there's been no accountability for what he's done.
Ruth wonders if it's in fact would be safe for if Kamala Harris wins, safe for her inauguration to be held outdoors. Is there enough going on now, insofar as you know, to protect an event of this magnitude and perhaps controversy as well?
I believe so. I believe so, and that's maybe the defiant me, and that's kind of what makes what I and I hate using this phrase, make America great. But that's what it's one of the great things about America is we respond. We don't shelter and hide, right? And I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't take political violence and threats seriously, no. But one of my proudest moments of January 6th was when they defiantly went back to the Capitol. Nancy Pelosi said, we're certifying this election. So they didn't let the bad guys win. So, I mean, can we imagine having an inauguration virtually or, just, no, that's not who we are. And a terrorist's job, a terrorist is successful when they make you change whatever you're doing. Um, they make you change your everyday life. They take away something that you hold dear, and they win if we do that. So maybe defiantly, me says, do whatever we need to do to make it safe, but we are doing this. And I believe that Vice President Harris would do the same thing when she's inaugurated.
It sounds as if, well, I know for many Americans, January 6th was a horrific day, a startling day, and a wake-up call to say, hey, democracy doesn't run on autopilot. You've got to put some work into it. It sounds like you came to the same conclusion too. And, as you said before, it was just a job, and now you've doubled down on what it means to be an American and to be civically engaged.
I'll tell you what, I took the job as a young kid and was 24 years old, 25 maybe.
You thought, hey, good money in overtime.
That's all I was thinking. Like, we're making good money. I got benefits. I can afford to, we go out to if I go out with my friends, I don't have to worry about who's buying drinks. Like, I got the drinks, guys. Order another round. I got it. I can pay for it. But then you start seeing things that affect you directly, that affect you personally. And it's you start to care about it. And obviously working at the foot of Congress, you kind of want to pay attention to what's going on. So every day there's protests going on and people are protesting Medicare and, Social Security or SNAP benefit. And I'm like, what is a SNAP benefit? So you start to pay attention to these things. You start to learn about the concerns and cares about other people. And over my 15-year, almost 16-year career, I started to learn a lot. I've always had the empathy part in me. I cared about people, but now knowing specifically what are they, what they're worried about, it made sense to me. And then hearing my parents have to worry about Medicare or Medicaid or all this stuff that affected my parents and their retirements and things like that. When things become personal, you start to care a little bit more. So I paid attention to it. And, before January 6th, I had protected Republicans, I protected Democrats. I didn't care. It was my job to make sure that anybody who had the platform or a safe space to say what they wanted to say, even if I disagreed with it. But on January 6th, they took a side. They attacked me and it became personal. So I said, the hell with this. The hell with this. I am speaking up. I'm pushing back, and I don't care who has anything to say about it.
You wrote in the book, when I think about Trump and his madness these days, I don't feel despair. I am fired up. I am committed to putting that son of a bitch in jail and fighting off all the minions who carry his poisonous, destructive message. Why is it still an effective message?
I people believe in, and I say segregation. I don't mean it as a racial. I'm not using it in racial terms right now, but people believe it's us versus them. That's when I say segregated. And Donald Trump looks at it as, if you listen to his recent interviews, he said as much about if you don't support him, you're his enemy. So people like to buy into that us versus them type of stuff. And I look forward to holding him accountable. And that's why, like I saw the question earlier in the chat. That's why I left the job. I felt like I did everything I could do as a Capitol Police officer to fight for accountability. That's what I fought for. But I felt like there's more. What's next? I'm very solutions oriented. If I get in an argument with a girlfriend or, a loved one or a friend, all right, okay, we're both upset. This is what you're saying happened. This is what I'm saying happened. How do we fix this? Let's not just be mad about let's be very solutions oriented. So I was like, I'll run for Congress. Let me run for Congress. I ran for freaking Congress because I wanted a seat at the table. I want to be part of the solution. I want to hold people accountable. And that's kind of like after I lost my primary, I lost to a very capable Democrat in Maryland here in the third district, and her name is Sarah Elford. She's going to be fantastic in Congress. I just think we had different reasons and motivations for running for Congress, but none of them were the same thing we agreed on is democracy, and we need fighters in Congress. And I think it's important now. I planned on taking a break because I haven't had a vacation. I haven't had a break since January 6th. I've just been going, going, going. So I planned on taking a short break after after my primary. 2 or 3 days later, I got a call from the Biden campaign and said they would love for me to be a surrogate, to be out there on the ground. I said, let's do it. Let's do it. We got a country to save. And I'm always looking for the next fight, so to speak. I've been all around the country. I've been to all the battleground states almost twice. I've been to Wisconsin 4 times. I was just in Long Island this weekend campaigning, being a surrogate for people that believe in democracy. And that's why I started a PAC, Harry Dunn's Democracy Defenders PAC. You check that out also if people want to help out. But we got 15 days left into this election, and we're doing all we can to raise money to help get our candidates. I think to this date, I've endorsed 11 Senate candidates, and we're rolling out a new batch of endorsements on 6 or 7 House representatives. Because yes, we elect Kamala Harris, but we need to have a functioning Congress there that can help her get her agenda passed. So I'm doing everything I can do and then after the election, I don't know. I don't know what's next. I hope that that's the scary part. If I can be vulnerable with y'all for a minute, I quit my job, my government job, almost 16 years in, 4 years short, 4 years short of being able to collect a full pension. I quit for a chance to try to make a difference.
Did you feel forced out?
No, not at all. The department supported me. They hated it because I was like a lightning rod. I would always bring attention. But I have people in the department that supported me. I still did my job. I was a training officer. I trained over 150 officers to become good police. This is before even January, and even after January 6th. I was a crisis negotiator. I was a crisis intervention officer. So I loved it. It's so crazy. I tell y'all might get a kick out of this. I made the decision once I finally made the decision to leave the department and run for office. I told my mom, and my mom, I said, "Yeah, mom, I quit." And she said, I didn't get to finish my sentence. She said, "You did what?" And she called me by my middle name. You know, your parents call you by your middle name. You know, it's over then. But no, I just believed it was important to continue fighting. But the scary part is I don't know what's next. I don't know what's next. And yeah, I hope, yeah, ideally I can find something in the federal sector that I can get 4 more years, but I don't believe my next job is going to be found on LinkedIn. I just feel like there's an opportunity for me to keep fighting and raising some type of awareness and everything like that. So, um, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
One of our viewers, Peggy, said she's very thankful you're able to speak about January 6th and the battles, and hope that all the therapy that you're getting and the PTSD treatment are really coming good. So,
Thank you.
we like to reserve the last few minutes for some positive thoughts, and
Sure.
you've given us a lot. But let's start with maybe your worst fear and then get to something hopeful.
The worst fear is Donald Trump winning again. That's a motivating factor for me right now. Um, I think he represents the worst of America, but we need to realize he does represent America. And for us to act like they don't exist, I think is what got his following so big now. People felt they didn't have a place, they didn't have anybody to listen to or anybody cared about them. The deplorables, that gets thrown out there a lot. Um, Donald Trump represents the worst of America, but he represents a part of America. But I don't think it's the biggest part of America. I think, and this goes to the hopeful part. I do. Republicans have not won a popular election, a popular vote in 20 plus years, since George W. Bush. I think that was the last time that they won a popular vote. Um, there are more people out there that care. And I'm not making this about Democrat versus Republican, but believe in decency, that believe in people, that believe in acceptance, openness, willingness to listen, forgive. There are more people in this world that exist that have those characteristics about them. That's what gives me hope. I think it's so important, though, that we don't lose focus on that. And I'll leave with this. Maybe everybody can relate. I know I can. Or just say you got on a new dress, or the guys, you got a new pair of shoes, or a new watch, or a new necklace, something new that you love and you think it's amazing. I love this watch. Or you know what? I love this necklace that I have on. And you got all your friends are complimenting on you, and you say, "Wow, you look great." Or look at that haircut. I love that hair color. And then one person comes up to you and says, I don't know if I like that too much. So we let that one person negate all that positivity that the world sees and loves about us. And we make that our focal point. And it's terrible, isn't it? We give that one person this power over us, and we shouldn't do it. And that's the way I view it. Like these people on the MAGA side, they're very loud, but I think there's so much more good in the world right now. But we can't act like they don't exist because they do. But I am hopeful going forward.
Well, Harry Dunn, the night of January 6th, you went home and had a hot shower and drank some good bourbon. And I hope that your bourbon collection is expanding and that you're getting
Absolutely.
your reward in a glass once in a while. You can find a link to Harry Dunn's book on our site here. You can also find a way to support this program. And I hope you will join us tomorrow when we commemorate the life and the work of David Lehrer. Harry Dunn, it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and everybody. I really appreciate you. I am on social media I'm gonna call it Twitter. My handle is Libra Dunn. It's the same thing on Instagram also. And please check out Democracy Defenders Pack. I think we have a place for you to contact us if anybody want to leave feedback. But thank you so much for being engaged and just caring enough to hear what I have to say. I'm truly honored and humbled that so many people are here. So thank you all, and y'all be great.
We are delighted that you could join us, and best of luck. And as
Thank you so much.
you can find a link to the book on this site, and you can also find out where to support programs like this. And as you see in the future, October 22nd, Jennifer Rubin with Warren Olney in a remembrance of David Lair. All of your support, all of your eyeballs are most welcome, and we'll see you again next time.